Hello everyone, I'm back with another video for you today after a rather long hiatus. Because to be honest guys, I've not been able to find a card game or really a game that I've been wanting to play and make videos on. So that's the main reason why I've not made videos for a while. If you've seen my most recent video, if the message wasn't clear, I think it's quite hard to find a good card game these days. And it seems difficult for companies to be actually able to make money with digital card games. I think that's why we have a lot of physical card games at the moment, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I have played a whole lot of physical card games throughout my life, and certainly there's a lot of overlap between them and their digital counterparts. So I did want to talk today about the best and the worst, the old ones and the new, and give you my thoughts on if you're going to try a physical card game. It's a very different experience, bear in mind, compared to the digital one where you just sit at home and you're playing, you're grinding ranked. No, with physical card games, you've got to go in person to the location, to the tournament, to the shop where the event is taking place and play with real people in person. So it's a very different experience, and in many ways it can be more rewarding. But to be honest, personally, I prefer digital card games because I like being able to just grind, and play, on my computer in the safety of my own place, as I'm sure is the same for some of you. But with that being said, we've got a few very well-known card games here, and I'm going to give my best at telling you which of these is worth playing. Of course, this is going to be very controversial. It's one of my tier lists, okay? It would not be a Freddy Babes tier list without many comments saying, "You are stupid, how could you put this in the F tier? You don't know anything. How could you rate a game that you have not played?" I know, it's unfair. It's an unfair world. I get to do it because it's on my YouTube channel. So, what are you gonna do? So, with that being said, let's get into this very controversial rating, this tier list of physical card games. So first up, should we start with Magic the Gathering? One of the all-time greats, everybody loves it, apart from me. I'm the only one. That being said, I'm comparing Magic the Gathering here to these other physical card games, so I'm going to give it a higher rating than I normally would when I'm comparing it to other card games, like digital card games, things like this, because my issues with the game are not as big, let's say, compared to some of these others. So with Magic the Gathering, it's a good game, it's timeless, it's very deep, there's a lot of different formats, it's of course very popular. There's a lot of complexity and high skill ceiling. There are some problems though, if we're being honest. You've got the issues with the mana. If you draw improperly, then you can just be at a huge disadvantage. There's quite a bit of randomness, in my opinion. Of course, you've got sideboarding and this kind of stuff, which can help mitigate that a little bit. But overall, I say there's a healthy amount of randomness, which can be very frustrating. And sometimes the games just get a bit bogged down. You have these stalled game states where you have a huge board and you're sort of waiting to attack, and it's just a bit tedious and difficult. And to be honest, I feel like that's just the old, dated systems of this game showing themselves. This is a very old card game. It's been around for what, like 40 years, something like that? Don't check me on that, okay? I'm not an expert, but yeah, I would say Magic, it's got some good foundation. It's a good, deep, complex game, and compared to some of these other games, it is solid, but at the end of the day, there are some major issues there. I'm going to put it in C tier, which is pretty high for me, okay? Normally, you're finding Magic at the very bottom of my tier list, so hopefully this time the Magic fans will not be too upset. Okay, next up, let's go with another old card game. So we've got Pokemon TCG here. Now this one, no, this is not cutting it for me, okay? This game, again, pretty old, but trying to replicate or imitate the Pokemon, video games, essentially, with the kind of gameplay. So as a professional card game player and someone that cares a lot about the strategic things that you can do in the card game and the underlying mechanics of the game that make it interesting to me, I've got to say Pokemon does not speak to me at all. This is an E. You've got like random coin flips being part of the game. It's all designed to be very thematically, appropriate. But for me, that doesn't really care very much about Pokemon. I'm sorry, it's not a physical card game I have any interest in playing. Don't think I ever will. So E tier for me. Sorry, Pokemon. Yeah, you're gone. And should we? Let's go to something different. Okay, let's try a little bit of Star Wars Unlimited. Now, this is a fairly new physical card game, which has been enjoyed by both card game players and board game players alike. I'm pretty sure. Quite an interesting take on the physical card game genre. You've got a system where you are able to get mana from the cards in your hand, so you're choosing which card you don't want to use and using it as mana, which some of the other games here also tend to do. You've got different locations where your units are fighting against the opponents. You've got a ground and an air. You've got a leader that you can deploy for big tempo. You've got a base, which acts as your health total, but you can also swap out your base and sort of change how much health you have to gain some kind of special effect. So there's quite a few things going on here. There's even like an initiative system where you can sort of pass to be able to play a card before your opponent, and that sort of thing. So there's quite a lot of depth, I would say, to this game, and it's a fairly interesting take on the typical sort of attacking your opponent, trying to kill them kind of card game. So I would say Star Wars Unlimited, pretty interesting to me. I don't think it's a terrible game. The one thing that I didn't love was the art and the sort of vibes. You know, it's a Star Wars game. I feel like some of the cards thematically were not really working with the Star Wars theme in that great of a way. So thematically speaking, to me, it was not the best. I think from a competitive and strategic sort of perspective, not a bad game. I'm going to pop it in A tier. Definitely not a bad one, and one that I would be interested perhaps to play more of in the future. Okay, next up, let's talk about One Piece card game. Now, this is one that I'm not, super qualified to talk about because I haven't played it very much at all, but I do have it on good authority. It is a very solid game, and I understand the mechanics of the game. There's some really unique aspects to it. In a similar way to Pokemon, you have sort of you put some cards that are sort of acting as your life total, but in Pokemon, you have, you're taking the cards when you kill the enemy's Pokemon, and in order to win, you have to get all the cards there. Whereas in One Piece, when you're being damaged by the opponent, you're the one taking the cards. So essentially, in Pokemon, it's a snowball mechanic where if you're winning, then you end up winning more because you're taking cards. Whereas in One Piece, it's sort of a catch-up mechanic. If you're getting battered by the opponent, you're able to get access to more resources. So I like that. I think Elder Scrolls Legends, the digital card game, also had a mechanic similar to that. So quite an interesting one. And you've got this sort of Don, I believe it is, aspect where you're able to sort of juice up your cards, and there's some interaction there with the mana and everything. So there's some interesting stuff with One Piece. I've not played it a huge amount, and it doesn't really speak to me because I'm not a One Piece fan, and it's not something I'm that interested in playing. But I have it on good authority that it's a good game. I'm going to put it in A tier. I think that's fair, and yeah, I think it's worth trying if you're into One Piece, the anime. Then it's an anime, I guess, right? I'm really no expert on this, but should be good, worth trying, I would say. Okay, next up we have, I'm saving this one, okay? The Riftbound, this is a new league. Let's do it now. Let's talk about Riftbound. This is League of Legends physical card game. What are they doing, mate? You're telling me they shut down Legends of Runeterra, like the PvP aspect of it, and then now they're relaunching. Well, they're launching a physical card game in order to essentially make more money. Let's be honest here, guys. The chance that this game will actually be able to turn a profit compared to Legends of Runeterra, which was not able to, yeah, you can kind of see why they're making this, right? And I've played Riftbound. To be honest, I don't think this game is that good. And if I'm completely frank, I think this is a little bit of a cash grab. And at worst, at best, it's just them trying to make money on a lot of the card gamey, ideas, art that they already have. You've got a lot of art coming over from Runeterra in this game, which some people are not a fan of, and there are a lot of mechanics that are very similar to the ones you found in Runeterra, such as, discard archetypes and this kind of thing. So it is a different game to Runeterra, but I do feel it's quite derivative, and it feels a bit like a soft relaunch of that game in order to make more money. I also have some issues with the win condition of the game. You have these battlefields, and you're essentially trying to win in... it's a bit of a difficult win condition to understand. You need to get to a certain number of points by conquering the battlefields, and then once you get to that level of points, you need to hold both battlefields or conquer them, as in take over that location twice in the same turn. It's like a little bit convoluted, unintuitive, difficult to get your head around, to be honest. And it leads to some situations in the game where the correct thing to do is to not attack your opponent and to let them just hold one of the locations. And to me, that just feels very counterintuitive, not very well thought through, and yeah, a bit cash grabby, if I'm honest. Now, I could be wrong, you know, maybe they release a bunch of cards for this game and it just magically, you know, really becomes very good. There are some interesting mechanics. It is, you know, you've got some things like the old sort of Paladin from Hearthstone kind of mechanics, and I would say this game to me feels like a digital card game in many ways, like a Hearthstone or a Runeterra, but in sort of a physical game format. I'm not sure if that's going to be for many people. If that's the kind of thing you might enjoy, then maybe this game would be for you. I'm going to have to, I think, guys, I'm going to have to put it in, maybe C? D tier. I think I'm going to put it in D tier. It just feels a bit not too well thought out to me, and I have some problems with that. There are some interesting, you know, aspects to it, for sure. The mana system is very cool. You know what? I'm going to put it in C. I think C is fair. Because the mana system I really do like. You basically get mana each turn, and certain cards will make you put that mana back in the deck, and there's a lot of ramping effects and this kind of thing. So you're really managing how much mana you have throughout the game, which I think is a very cool concept. And the battlefield system, you know, with deck building, it has some kind of, you can change out which battlefield you're using depending on your deck in order to, you know, make it more beneficial for you. So there's certainly some pros here, but yeah, Riftbound, I don't know, a little bit, yeah, could be better for sure. Okay, next we've got Disney's Lorcana. For me, this kind of has some similar issues with Riftbound. You know, the way that you win in this game is by basically your units go on quests. So instead of attacking a health total, they're sort of questing and giving you points. And it's a little bit unintuitive, that idea. Certainly you have some situations where you're sort of winning on the board and you have like all these units, but then you're just losing because the enemy can just do this questing thing and get points. So to me, that feels a little bit not great. I prefer it when the card game is very intuitive and it makes sense, and you know, you're just killing the opponent, or you need to get the most point total in the case of like Gwent or Marvel Snap, right? So to me, that lets Lorcana down a bit. I do like the mana system again. You are, you know, inking certain cards, so you're putting cards that you don't want as your mana, which is always a good way to handle mana. That's the issue I have with Magic, is that your mana screwed a lot of the time, which makes you feel very bad. But yeah, Lorcana, I think, comfortably in B. Not a terrible game, but not that inspiring to me, and not one of the best here, I would say. Okay, next we have Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, we could talk about Flesh and Blood first, I guess. Why not? S tier. I think Flesh and Blood is a very solid card game. I did play a lot of it. I even played in tournaments for this card game, and yeah, I think Flesh and Blood is really solid. It's sort of, to me, it feels like a modern Magic the Gathering in many ways. You know, you've got very high level of skill expression and a lot of player interaction, and it's very deep, but it's quite approachable, and to be honest, it's just very intuitive, and it's also very unique. You know, the game works as sort of a flow of you're playing attacking cards, and your opponent is blocking with their cards, and then they're going to attack you back with anything that they want to use. And yeah, it's basically about managing, going on the offense with playing more defensively. You know, you have to strike a fine balance in that regard and play efficiently. And I think someone like me, it's a very fun experience. Finally, guys, we've got Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game. I think, well, there's one spot here left on the tier list. I think I'm going to have to throw it in D tier. It makes sense. It just makes sense. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Yes, it's one of those games that, you know, when we were younger, getting into was quite exciting. All the card art was very cool, and it was quite interesting to play. Not too simple, you know, not too difficult to get into necessarily. Like, the basic rules are quite straightforward, but I think once you get into competitive play, the game sort of just falls apart because you're getting all kinds of bizarre decks that are like one-turn killing, or, you know, locking the game state down in some way. It's just a bit strange and odd, to be honest, and not very approachable. I think if you are new in terms of then going into a competitive, you know, approach. So yeah, for me, Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't really do it. I think it's like a bit dated, and not really a card game I would want to play at the moment. You'll notice here all of the older card games are kind of at the bottom. I think that's a good thing, right? That means the newer card games are better, they're innovating, and there are some aspects that I think, yeah, make them worth playing. But that's my tier list, guys. What do you think of this? I think it's controversial, but to be honest, I'm pretty happy with this, and I think you would be hard-pressed to disagree with what I've got here. I think it's top-notch. Riftbound, we'll see. I mean, this card game, I don't know. To me, that's a bad look, releasing the Runeterra stuff, essentially, and trying to get more more money from it, milk the players a little bit. It's not a good look in my opinion, but let me know if you disagree, what you think about that. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Subscribe as always for more videos, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye bye.